Today, our lesson is kind of a start. It's on developing a servant's heart. So let me give you a bunch of passages, and then we'll go through and read them. Matthew chapter 4. Matthew chapter 4, verses 8 through 10. Matthew chapter 23. And verse 11. There'll be a couple of verses with it. Then Luke chapter 10. Actually, we'll skip that one. Don't worry about that. You can just put it down and read the whole chapter sometime. All right. Luke chapter 15 and verse 25 through 32. Luke 15, 25 through 32. Luke 22, 23 through 34. Okay, so we had two passages in Matthew and two passages in Luke. All right, so let's go through and we'll read those kind of as an introduction. Matthew chapter 4 is the temptation of Christ. And here in this passage in verse 8, it says, again, the devil taketh him into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them, and saith unto him, all these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then saith Jesus unto him, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. We're using that to help us at the beginning to understand that in developing a servant's heart, what we're doing is we're focusing all of our work towards God. So even though I may work at Fairhaven Baptist Church, or wherever you put your name, the church that you're working in, maybe you worked this summer, maybe you worked as a teenager, and so you put the name of that church in there, and you say, well, I'm working for them. No, what we're doing, we worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. So our service is always directed upward. Even though I am serving here at Fairhaven Baptist Church, I am serving God. It's very important to have that in order. All right, Matthew 23. That was our second passage, Matthew 23. This is a talk that Jesus did to his disciples. And there was the multitude there, but it was directed a lot to his disciples. And what he was talking to them about is the Pharisees and how that there was a lot of arrogance. There was a lot as far as they wanted prestige. The reason that they were doing things is just to get a name for themselves, to get recognition. Then it says in verse 11, but he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. And verse 12 is another one, and whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. Very important to keep that concept as we start into thinking about ministry. And then we said there's two passages in Luke. Luke 15. All right, before getting there, I'm always quizzing my older students. Luke 15, what do we got? Come on now. What? The Lost series. Wow. Is that kind of like the Harry Potter series? You got no. The Lost. So you have the lost coin, the lost sheep, and the lost son. Okay, so this is dealing with the prodigal son, but not the prodigal. It is his brother. All right, Luke 15, verse 25. Now his elder son was in the field. Okay, so this is his brother, and what we see with his brother is that he is irritated at the prodigal, right? Remember that scenario? He's irritated, and the father addresses him Um, in verse 31, he says, "And he said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and be glad, for this thy brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found." The reason we're using that as an example at the beginning, because our service is always to God. All right, and then in Matthew 23, the greatest among us is the servant. And a picture of somebody that has a bad attitude is the older son. He is serving his father, and he's concerned about who? The prodigal. You have to be careful of that in service. The elder son was showing that he did not have a servant's heart. In Luke chapter 22 is our last passage. Luke 22. Verse 23, "And they began to inquire among themselves which of them it was that should do this thing. And there was also a strife among them, which of them should be accounted the greatest." And this was actually in the Greek. The word for this area is called the dormitory. And he said unto them in the meeting room, "The king of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and they that exercise authority upon them are called benefactors. But ye shall not be so. But he that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger. And he that is chief, as he that doth serve." All right, so in this passage, what is it telling us? It's telling us there's an attitude again of service, an attitude of humbleness. So how do we develop this servant's heart? We're going to take two stories. The one is Mark chapter 7. The other one's in Matthew, and I did not write it down. But I'm glad I got you guys here, because you guys are so quick. The other one is in Mark chapter 7, we have Jesus talking about, they bring unto him one that was deaf and had an impotent in his speech, and they beseech him to put a hand upon him. Then the other one is found, it's the story of the man that was impotent, or he was lame, and he was born of 4. Remember that one? So where's my skills at, men folk? No? You just can't throw it down for me there? You didn't read that? Study that? No? Okay, so that's the other passage, and I did not write that down. And so it could be nothing, guys? No? Guys, come on, man. I thought you guys would have it all right there. Okay, so Mark chapter 7, we have, they bring unto him one that was deaf and had an impotent in his speech, and they beseech him to put his hand upon him. So that's Mark 7 and verse 32. Then we have another passage. Oh, actually, it might be Mark 2. Sorry. Maybe I did write it down. Look at that. So good. I had it written down already. I didn't need you guys. I'm glad I don't have to rest upon your Bible knowledge, guys. I'd be left hanging all the time. So in chapter 2, Mark 2, he entered into Capernaum after some days, and it was noised that he was in the house. And straightway many were gathered together, insomuch there was no room to receive them, no, not so much as about the door. And he preached the word unto them. They come unto him, bringing one sick of the palsy, which was born of 4. So in this idea of developing a servant's heart now, we have an introduction. We have a bunch of passages in the Gospels that indicate to us there needs to be an adjustment in our attitudes. How do we know that? Well, Jesus seems to be repeating this idea. He's even tempted by the devil to do what? To bow down and lift the devil up, right? On this earth. So it is a tendency in our flesh, and it's going to be a tendency that the devil's going to hit you with that, why am I not getting recognized? Well, you can go way back at the beginning of time, and what was the plight of the devil? Or what was one of the problems of the devil? I'm not getting recognized. And then what did he do to Eve? Hey, God's holding back on you, right? So in ministry, the devil's going to hit that in your mind sometimes. Where's my recognition? You know what? Why aren't they recognizing me? I mean, it just seems like I'm doing all this and there's nothing there. Okay? So we have to understand that it can be a problem. So in starting and looking at ministry, one of the first things we have to do is make sure that our heart and our attitude is right. And we're going to have to check that every so often. Because the devil's going to hit you sometimes, and later in the class sessions, that's when I'm having Mr. Olson come in, and he's going to do 2 sessions on it. He's going to, all right, how to help with discouragement. Why? Because you're going to have days that it's going to be down. You're not always just going to pop up and be like, woo, wow, man, I'm ready. Okay? Because there's going to be days that it's hard. So how are you going to keep going? And what about difficulties and how to keep charged up? All right, so we're going to address some of those things later in months to follow. All right, but right here, we're going to look at, I think it's 5 ideas. Yep. And it's top heavy. All right, it's top heavy on the outline. All right, so here we go. First, in this passage, we're taking this passage and we're taking 5 words from this passage to help us in developing a servant's heart. First of all, the word sweat. Sweat. In both passages, in Mark chapter 2 and in Mark chapter 7, there's a phrase that we get all 3 of our first points from 2 words. In Mark chapter 2, it says, they come unto him bringing. All right, and that one, it's basically one word. It's bringing. In Mark chapter 7, in verse 32, it says, and they bring. Right there, you get 3 of our points right from those 2 words, from they bring and bringing. First of all, it's sweat. This is what you have to help in developing a servant's heart. What you have to understand is ministry will be sweat. It'll be work. It's not just, some people think, well, I'm going to, you know what, I don't have a lot of stamina. I can't really work really hard. And I like to read a lot. And I want time with my family. So, yeah, I don't want to be an electrician. I don't want to do that. Oh, I think I'll be a preacher. Okay? Well, what you have to understand is sweat is involved basically in anything in life, but in ministry also. So in developing a servant's heart, I need to understand that I'm going to have to work in order to succeed, but I'm also going to have to work in the ministry. They bring. It required no small effort. They brought a deaf and dumb man to Christ in Mark 7. In Mark 2, they were bringing a man that couldn't walk, an impotent man. But they did it. Service for God is not an easy task. There are many difficulties involved. You'll have to work very hard at times. And the majority of times, it's thankless. Sometimes your work is unnoticed. Some of you, that's why we encourage you. We started in our, kind of freshman year. We talked to you about that, and I'm glad that many of you, talked to your home churches. You've talked to different folks that have come in here, and you've tried to get out there and maybe do an internship. And I understand it's hard. You've got to get money. You've got all these different things, the pressures that are there. But trying to do some of that, why is that good? Because getting there and maybe interning and normally, I don't know what some of you have done, but normally I would say a minimum of 6 weeks. You're trying to do 6, maybe 8 weeks or something like that. Well, what are you seeing there? Hey, we got to set up for this. You know what? I need to do the ministry of the word. Okay? No, what you're going to do is we got to set up this tent. We got to get ready for this weekend for this. That's some of it. All right, and then all kinds of people come in. All right, and this will happen this Saturday and Sunday. All right, starting actually today. They're setting up the gym. They're setting up down by the pavilion all day tomorrow. They'll be doing the same thing on Saturday, and then we'll have all kinds of church people there on Saturday setting up little things. Then Sunday, basically a whole bunch of kids will be down there, and all of them will be there, and afterwards they will line up at each of the booths and give them a hug and say, "We thank thee for what thou hast done for us." No, you'll have, hey, how come I didn't get that? You need to have a spirit of gratitude. It can always happen. I can think about that as far as a pastor, as assistant pastor. I don't think I ever got one thank you for the fair day. Ever. A written thank you so much for the fare that thou dost provide. No. Okay? So sometimes it's thankless. We have to understand that. You get done with a banquet. You're like, shh. And then somebody will say, why? Why would I say thank you to him? You know what? I paid for it. Yeah, okay, you paid $3.50. All right, you can't even get a fry anymore at McDonald's. They keep on raising it. I mean, they just raised my Dunkin' Donuts coffee. I was talking to them. I was like, oh, hello. I was like, what's up? I said, where's the manager? I started laughing with them. And they're like, oh, I don't have any control. I said, you know what? You gotta have some say. I said, you know what? Here you are handing it out, and you're going to get the beef. I'm going to crab at you. You need to be having some say in this. All right? You just randomly raise my coffee now? All right? You're making me weigh it. I mean, I can use my Keurig, or I can be lazy, get in my car, drive 10 minutes, and then come back, and my Keurig would already be done. I said, think about that. I think about that. You're making it a lot easier for me to just stay home and push the button. All right, but thankless. Sometimes it's thankless. Sometimes our work is unnoticed by those who are receiving the help. So, does this mean we stop serving? No. Our service is deep-rooted in a love for our Savior. And our position may be different. Our position may be that our job is to bring people to Christ, as in we're a shuttle car, or we're just inviting somebody out. But don't despise that position. It could be that, I can tell you this, I thank the Lord for our nursery workers. Because otherwise, they would be all in the church service. And that's hard sometimes. There are people, man, they get bent out of shape about putting their kid in a nursery. Now, they'll leave it at home with some nutcase babysitter that they found online, and they come walk into the door, and it's, tattoo piercing person, all right, and they smell like weed, okay, and you're like, oh, yeah, here's my kid, all right, but how Oh, I'm in the nursery. Okay, well, I'm glad we have a nursery. Otherwise, man, we wouldn't be able to hear a thing in the auditorium. So there are jobs that we're doing that nobody even recognizes. That's all right. Why? Because I'm doing it for the Lord. And yet, it is going to take work. It's sweat. So there are some ideas that I thought would be helpful for us in understanding this. And I think I have the wrong order here. Oops. There we go. All right, so sweat. So here's a couple of thoughts to help us with this idea of sweating. First, we're serving Christ. My work is for Christ. And I serve Christ without looking at the punch clock. Get that in your heart now. And I understand, that's one reason why college is good for us, especially in our type of training. It's very specialized. Okay? People that say, well, you know what, ministry training, it should just be, I can get it almost anywhere. No, you can't. All right? Tell me if churches are functioning really good today. No, they're not. So I don't want to just go to some big university and get my training in ministry. Why? Because they have no clue. All right? That dork professor that's up there, he probably didn't even go to church. Or he goes to church once a month and he's a Christian. No, he isn't. He doesn't even know. He doesn't understand what a servant's heart is. He doesn't understand what it is to get out there and work in the ministry. And what we have to understand is service for God, and that's why I like in the college setting. That's what I learned. I can remember my freshman year, my sophomore year, and on and on. I learned how to schedule things because it was up in the morning. I had to get some extra studying in, get my devotions in, run over here, grab a bite to eat, and then you're at class. You get done with class, you got this going on here, and then you get done with that, and then for me it was sports. Okay? Then I'd go to sports, and then I had work after that. I'd come back and crash, get up, and it was all the same thing. And then I'd hit the weekend. And the weekend for us, like, oh yeah, that's when we have a lot of activity, a lot of kind of just bonding time. No, you know what? That's when we crank it. Why? Because we're studying for ministry. And ministry is weekend. You go to a church, it's not like, let me see, what's coming up on Sunday? No, Saturday and Sunday, it's game time. You better have your A game on, starting on Saturday morning, basically, all the way to Sunday night, and then you crash. Okay? That is, you have to understand, I can't have a punch clock, and neither can you. It can't be like, oh, well, you know what? It's 4:30. I don't know. Could you schedule your death tomorrow morning? I got an opening between 9 and 10. Could you just fall over then? All right? The things that some of it we're dealing with, and also, all right, what about in a marriage situation? Marriage is falling apart. They're calling you up. You got to be there. Now, is it always that way? It's not always that way. But you've got to get out of your mind that there's a punch clock. And that, well, I already put in a lot of time this week. So what? My service is to God. And if you read, all right, you'll notice two things when you read Christ in the Gospels. All right? And as students studying to be in the ministry, we should be reading all the time the Bible. Besides our other things, we should be in God's Word, just kind of analyzing, thinking about it. All right, why? Well, because when you see the Gospels and you're following Christ, what do you notice? That it seems like he never slept. Although we know he did. Because he said, foxes have holes, birds have nests, but the Son of Man hath nowhere to lay his head. So he laid it somewhere once. Okay, he laid it somewhere. But it seems to indicate he didn't sleep that much. Because we'll notice that he's walking down from a mountain in the early morning and he was praying all night. I'm like, oh, why do you got to put that in there? I'm like, I'm tired. Okay, sometimes we're tired. But what you're going to find, so you're going to see that Christ, you don't see him sleeping a lot. It doesn't talk about that a lot. But then the other thing you see is Christ never was in a hurry. You never see him rushing around like, all right? You don't get that impression. It seems like, hey, he's walking somewhere and someone touches him. He's like, okay, all right, what do you need? And everybody else around him is like, come on, come on. All right, remember even Lazarus? All right, they're running up to him and he's like, oh, so what I'm thinking here, he died. All right, you don't see that with Christ because he had purpose, and that's what you're going to find. I'm not on a punch clock, and you've got to get that in your head. To develop a servant's heart, I can't have a punch clock mentality. That'll help me in understanding that I'm going to put in work, I'm going to put in a lot of time. It's sweat. The other thing with service, okay, our service for Christ, our service for Christ when I'm sweating, all right, this is the idea of work. My service for Christ, I'm not doing it on a clock. Whatever time he needs me, I'm there. But then also, my service for Christ, when I'm done with it, all I've done is my duty. That'll help you also in developing a servant's heart. Sometimes we think that we've put in so much. There's nobody on the staff, there's nobody in the church that works like I do. Okay? But you know what you got to understand? All you're doing is your duty. That's it. And that'll help you in developing a servant's heart. I'm going to work, and I'm going to work hard, but when it comes down to it, when I get done with all my work, God's like, oh, good. There's no accolades. It's not like heaven's open up and like, whoa, I am so glad I got him. No, you're just doing your duty. Okay? Duty means that we've done what we are owed, or what we owed. When we do our duty, we are merely paying our debt. Duty is the desire to be useful that transform you. That was an author that wrote that. He said, duty means we have done what we owed. When we do our duty, we are merely paying our debt. Duty is the desire to be useful, and it transforms you. And I mentioned this before, and this idea of serving, avoid extremes and maintain balance. Again, an author wrote this, and I thought it was really good. In life, we run between two extremes with this idea of sweat. And balance should be what we're trying to shoot for. What is it? One extreme is self-congratulation. And by that, we're saying, I am so important. Look at me. Look what I'm doing. Hello. Look at guys. All right, so avoid that in our work. But then the other side is the bottom. So you have this top pier where you're the man, you want praise. But then there's the bottom pier, and sometimes, and in the college world, you got to bust yourself out of that. Because on the bottom side is self-despondency. It's like, oh, I can't do anything. I'm so lowly. And so then you try to get them to help. You don't want them to help. Why? Because they're so worthless, because I can't do it. Sorry, this extreme here is bad, but this extreme is bad. Why? Because did God tell you to do it? Then I'm not going to be up here wanting praise, but I'm also not going to be down here in such despair and despondency that I'm worthless. And make sure in service that you have that attitude. All right, I'm not saying that you're up there and you're like all confident. I can do all things. That's my motto. I have it on my shoes even. No. You know what? I'm not thinking that I'm this great person, but I'm also understanding that being down here is not going to help me get the job done. God called me to do it. He said he'll supply the need. He'll supply what's necessary for you to get the job done. Then guess what? The praise goes to him, but I don't have to be down here walling around in the mud because I'm going to get the job done. And so can you. That's the idea of sweat. The second thing in this, remember we said there's three. We'll get it. All right, we'll get them all. Maybe our last point or two, we just write them down. All right, so then we said they bring or bringing. Remember the one word and the two words. The first word was sweat. The second word is sacrifice. So what did it take for the men, the four men? Did it take some effort for them to bring? Oh, yeah, it did. What about the deaf and dumb man? All right, remember, he can't hear or talk. We're going to see Jesus. Do you think it was irritating? I'm thinking it was. I don't know if, during the time of Christ, if these guys that were there in Mark chapter 7, if they had a class on the deaf ministry. And they're like, all right, I'm thinking they probably didn't. They're trying to tell them, we got to get to Christ. Why? Because he can heal you. He probably is punching them. Quit touching me. Except he didn't say it. Right? And then here's another guy, he's an impotent man, and they had to get their own material. Then they had to take time out of their schedule. They may have jobs. They're men. And then they get there, and it's crowded. So let's stop. It's sacrifice sometimes on our part. So let me give you a couple of things that we have to sacrifice. There's 5 things we got to sacrifice. Let me list them out. In ministry, you're going to sacrifice time. You're going to sacrifice energy. You're going to sacrifice money. You're going to sacrifice talent. And you're going to sacrifice plans. So what do we mean by those? So let's quickly touch on those. Sacrifice of time. Any type of service, in the very least, is going to take time. It's going to take time. It could mean taking time to cook a meal for somebody. It could mean taking time to watch some children. It could mean sitting with somebody because they're lonely. Any service is going to take time. I don't know how you're going to get away with not having time sacrifice sometimes. So, and if I understand that, when I'm serving, I understand that time sometimes is going to be gone. Second thing, energy. This is what I can tell you. You can wear yourself out, and sometimes I enjoy doing projects every once in a while, and so the kids and I we'll get at it, and we'll try to nail something, have a day, even Labor Day, and we were knocking some things out, getting some things done. We learned how to change plugs even. I don't know if our house is going to burn down someday, but we're like, we can figure this out. We're looking on YouTube, doing all this, trying to figure it out ourselves. But guess what? We're gonna get a bunch of things done. So I like that, and I like doing things, and I like working outdoors. I like doing projects like that. But this is what I can tell you. There's nothing that'll wear you out like dealing with people. You will have migraines the size of, I don't know, Jerusalem. All right? All right. I mean, they're gonna be huge. Okay? Why? Because it's going to wear on you. And this, let me challenge you this way then. Okay? If not, and this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to learn about service, ministry. So what should you do? Try while you're in college to learn some of it. You can make mistakes when you're in college that you can't make when you get out. You really can. Because people will give you grace, like, that's a college student. Even people that are in charge be like, oh, it's a college student. They're learning. All right? So you get some leeway. All right? But what's weird is the year after you're out, all of a sudden there's no leeway. Like, why did you mess up? Like, didn't you go to college? Like, yeah, but I didn't, I didn't learn, I didn't actually do that. All right, but then all of a sudden, yeah, but you went to college. Okay, but right now, so what should you do? Try to get involved in places that you can work with people. So that means, soul winning. I learned tons in soul winning with different people. All right, now you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it because right now, if you talk to him, you would think that he's half dead. But my soul winning partner for almost 6 months was Tom Haiti. Okay, and this is what I can tell you. I learned so much about soul winning from him because he could get a conversation with people, with almost anybody. And I'm sitting there, I'm on the side, I'm like, how did you do that? Just kind of come up. And even now, he almost still talks the same. It's kind of like, so, how you doing? And all of a sudden, he's got the track out. And then so I come up and like, okay, it's my turn. I get up there and I'm like, so what I'd like to do. How did you do that? All right, some people do have a knack that people just kind of talk to them. But I learned to try to work at it. Even now, I'm always working. I'm walking down the street. I'm trying to think, okay, so if I can use this, if I can talk about this, I'm going to try to lead in with this line. Well, I learned to do that in college, going with different people. Why? Because I wanted to learn how to be a soul winner. And it doesn't happen just overnight. It takes sacrifice of energy. That means I could take my college nap, all right, which is like every half hour, or I can just say, you know what, I got to learn some more stuff. I sacrifice some energy. And energy means that sometimes I'm tired. All right, sacrifice of energy, sacrifice of money. Full-time service. Guess what you're not going to be? A millionaire. All right, there's a couple of them out there. We know that. There's a couple of them out there, and they're multimillionaires, and they're in the ministry. I can pretty much tell you it ain't happening to you. Yeah, it's not happening for me either. Why? Because I don't believe that God wants that. It's a different purpose. I'm not here to be a multimillionaire. What am I here? I'm here to work for the Lord. So sacrifice of money means that I understand that there are, and this is true, I think I've shared this with you before, there are young couples, there are guys that are 27 years old in my church, and they make more than me. 27. So what? That's not my calling. My calling is not in construction or in some business world or whatever. So what? That's not my focus. So I'm supposed to get bent out of shape, the devil will come and whisper, see, you don't got any. I have enough. And God takes care of me fine. And that's not what my life is about. So what? So what they get to do this? So, I got guys that, they get 6 weeks of vacation. 6 weeks. Holy cow, what are you doing? I'm joking with them about it. So what? And I'm going to crying? No. Sacrifice of time, energy, money. Now, talent, you'd say, wait a minute, how's talent? Sacrifice of talent. All right, this may seem like an odd thing to include in the list, but what do I mean by that? Well, my talents, right? And God gives each of us. If you haven't done a study in Romans and in Corinthians on the gifts, I believe that God has certain gifts even at this time. Okay, and they're kind of people have done really good studies on that. I would recommend it sometime to do your own study because everybody has different gifts. So I know I have different gifts, and somebody would say, "Well, take those gifts and use them to make money." No, my gifts are sunk in this place to better the work of God. And so that's why I say sacrifice. Now, it's not out there. Some people have a voice. Some people, maybe they can play the piano and maybe somebody can speak or whatever. I know guys, they don't, I'm not saying that I'm this unbelievable speaker, right? But I work at speaking. I know I can speak some. I know guys that have a lot less. I wouldn't want to hear them speak, okay? They're motivational speakers and make buku monies. And I'm like, holy cow, people listen to you? What do you motivate them how to not live life like you? Or not to talk like you? I mean, but they make tons of money. But that's not my job. So sacrifice of time, energy, money, talent, and plans. You know, there are some times that you're going to have things all laid out. Oh, and I'm a planner. I like planning all the way out. I like planning all kinds of different things. But you know what I've learned? The servant's heart means I'm going to do this. No, I can't. It's all right. That's fine. That's developing a servant's heart. My life, my time is all God's. Especially when you say I'm a full-time servant. Okay, we said that there's 5. So let me give you the other 3. Okay, then you can, fill in all your stuff. You can just make up some points underneath those other 3. Okay, so we said that there's sweat, there's sacrifice, there's sympathy. What does that mean? They had to notice that person, didn't they? They had to notice them. Sympathy. The 4th thing in developing a servant's heart is sound judgment. That's they bring them unto who? Christ. If you're going to develop a servant's heart, you're going to know where to bring people to. Not to you, it's to Christ. That's what our job is. Then, and I think it's Mark 7, it says, the verse continues and it says they beseech him. So what is that? That's supplication. If I'm going to have a servant's heart, all of those things are going to be necessary for me to accomplish what God wants me to in the ministry. One person put it this way. I close with this. It's named Perhaps. I'll go where you want me to go, dear Lord. Real service is what I desire. I'll sing a solo anytime, dear Lord, but please don't ask me to sing in the choir. I'll do what you want me to do, dear Lord. I like to see things come to pass, but don't ask me to teach girls or boys, or Lord, I'd rather just stay in my class. I'll do what you want me to do, dear Lord. I yearn for the kingdom to thrive. I'll give you my nickels and dimes, dear Lord, but please don't ask me to tithe. I'll go where you want me to go, dear Lord. I'll say what you want me to say. I'm busy just now with myself, dear Lord. I'll help you some other day. You know what we need to be careful of? We need to be careful of not having a servant's heart. Servant's heart is what? It's developed by sweat, by sacrifice, by sympathy, by sound judgment, and by supplication. If you're gonna be in the ministry, that's what our desire is. There's going to be some days the devil's going to attack you and say, you know what, you're not getting the recognition, it's not worth putting in the time, but my service is to the Lord. That goes back to Matthew 4. It's one of the first verses we read at the start of the class. My service is to the Lord. Let's make sure that at the start, we're going to talk about organizing, we're going to talk about different aspects of ministry, starting tomorrow with the bus ministry. But if we are not proper in our heart's condition, and that means developing that servant's heart, then all the organization is out the door. Why? Because it's going to all be in vain.